Hey mamas, Sam McCormick here, and I have the lovely Amelia helping me out today, as always. And welcome to our second ever EULA. I'm super excited. Thank you so much for joining me. I do have a very fun announcement at the end of this video, but before we get there, I wanted to talk about why it is so important to read the ingredients list and the nutrition label on your foods and how you can actually go about looking at these labels. Now, this may not be something that you necessarily think about. I know it's not something that I thought about a ton before I started on my health and wellness journey, but as I started to learn more about the different chemicals and things that go into processed foods, it became a priority for me. Now, I try to stick as much as possible to a whole food plant-based diet, which means that the foods that I am eating do not come with nutrition labels or ingredients lists because they are things like potatoes and peppers and carrots and lettuce. So they don't have these labels. But when I am purchasing things that are not necessarily found in nature, like tomato sauces, for example, or plant-based butters or things like that, I do read the ingredients list and the nutrition labels to make sure that what I am purchasing is not going to contain any sort of harmful ingredients for myself or my family, because my biggest concern is to prevent diseases both in myself and my husband and my children, because I definitely do not want my children ever to get sick. That is my biggest fear. So this is a super big priority for me. So I pulled out this container of Swiss Miss out of the back of my pantry here, and I just wanted to show you. You can see here that you have the nutrition facts up here, which you may be familiar with. This is something that usually most people talk about, especially in the weight loss industry. But what is not necessarily known is the ingredients list. Now, this is something that I want you to concentrate on. And when you are done watching this video, I would love for you to go into your pantry and into your refrigerator and start looking at all of the ingredients lists on your food to see what you are eating. Excuse me. My rule of thumb when I am looking at ingredients lists on products is if I don't know what it is, then I don't eat it. When I first started this journey, I did Google a ton. I would always Google anything that I didn't know to see what it was. And if it was any type of chemical or preservative or anything that could be potentially harmful to myself or my family, I did not purchase that food product. I also try to look for ingredients that are organic. So 99.9% of the food that I purchase is organic. Now, depending on what food you are purchasing, organic is kind of a loose term. You want to look for organically branded products, but if it is just labeled as organic, it can be a little loose. The company may term it as organic even if it's not technically not organic, but still try to go towards organic products anyway. And what this means is that typically it's more sustainably farmed and you are less likely to have pesticides on your foods. Also, speaking of pesticides, I try to buy foods that are non-GMO. And the reason I do this is because genetically modified organisms, GMOs, are only genetically modified to be able to survive being sprayed with pesticides. Now, what pesticides are is they are actually the chemicals from World War II that were used in the gas chambers and that were used to kill millions of people. And these chemicals are now being sprayed onto our foods. So if you are not buying non-GMO, if you are not buying organic foods, then there is a very, very, very high likelihood that you are consuming these pesticides. And unfortunately, these pesticides, because they are sprayed so liberally on all of our foods, are getting into not just our food, they're getting into our bodies because we're consuming them. They're getting into the soils and the waters on our planet, and it is destroying everything. But these pesticides can cause many, many, many different diseases, which is why you want to avoid them as much as possible. So number one is to go to a farmer's market to buy all of your food if possible, and make sure you're talking to the farmers to see if they use pesticides and if they use regenerative agriculture. If they don't, do not purchase from them. If farmers markets are not an option, I know they're not for me. I live out in the middle of nowhere in the desert. They're basically no farmers markets, I try to buy as much fresh organic produce that is non-GMO as possible. I would highly recommend that you look on your packaging for all of your food, and if it is non-GMO, typically companies take pride in that, so there will usually be a big label right on the front. If there's not, read the back. Most products now have to be labeled whether they are GMO or if they're not GMO. So make sure you are looking at that when you're buying your foods. Another thing you want to look at when you're looking at the ingredients list is look for hidden sugars. Now, the biggest culprit of hidden sugars is high fructose corn syrup. Now, this is a modified sugar substitute that's made from corn, and it is super bad for you. And like 99% of the processed foods that are on the shelves contain high fructose corn syrup. For instance, this Swiss Miss right here contains it. I also have a container of Progresso breadcrumbs in our pantry, which we no longer use, which I was surprised when I looked at the ingredients list, contains high fructose corn syrup. Okay, honey. Which you would not think that a container of breadcrumbs would have added sugar, but it does. So be very careful. There are hundreds of different names for added sugars, and high fructose corn syrup is just the most popular. So when you're looking at your ingredients list, make sure that you are Googling anything you don't know and see if it's added sugar. Speaking of sugars, one of the things you want to look at on your nutrition facts label is how much sugar is in the products that you are consuming. Now, the ADA recommends that you consume no more than 6 to 9 teaspoons of sugar a day. Now, when you are looking at a nutrition facts label, they do not list sugar in teaspoons, they list it in grams. So you're gonna have to do a little bit of math. Approximately 4 grams equals 1 teaspoon. So for instance, this hot cocoa powder, for every serving, which is 3 tablespoons, there are 23 grams of sugar. So that is about 6 teaspoons of sugar. That is your entire daily allotment in one single hot chocolate. So when you were, okay honey, please be quiet. When you are looking at your nutrition labels and in your foods, these hidden sugars are really a huge culprit in not being able to lose weight, because sugar goes into your system, and usually these products contain so much sugar that it's overloading your system and it's being converted directly into fat. So you are not able to lose weight. It was one of my huge things when I was trying to lose weight and I couldn't, was because I was consuming so much sugar. On average, the average American consumes, I believe it's between 45 and 50 teaspoons a day, when you're only supposed to be eating 6 to 9 of added sugars. And these are processed sugars too. If you're eating fruit, it does not count into that. That is just processed sugars, because fruit has fiber in it, so it digests way slower, and fruit is actually super good for you. So don't let that sway you away from eating fruit. Eat more fruit. But processed sugars, you should only be eating 6 to 9 teaspoons a day max. One of the other things that you need to pay attention to on your foods and your nutrition label is the sodium intake. Usually companies will add a lot of sodium into their foods. It's typically a preservative, but again, us Americans, we again consume way too much salt. A little bit of salt is necessary for you to function properly, but we eat way too much. And sugar and salt are addictive too. So if you are cutting back on sugar and salt, you're probably going to have very intense cravings. This is actually withdrawal. It's normal. It sucks. You're going to have to muscle through it when you are starting to pay attention to what foods you are eating, but you will get through it, I promise. The kids are getting super fussy, my goodness. So let's see what else is super important when you are looking at your ingredients list. I think that is pretty much it in terms of paying attention to what you are consuming and what is in your foods. Again, you want to avoid any chemicals, avoid any GMOs, avoid tons of added sugars. Try to go towards farmers markets to buy anything that you are eating, whether it is fruit, vegetables, or animal products. If that's not available to you, try to get organic as much as possible. And also pay attention to the serving sizes when you were looking at your nutrition labels. because companies will try to put a smaller serving size on their products, so this way it looks like they have less sugar and less sodium in them. So that's another way to get around rules and regulations, so pay attention to that. And the kids are getting super fussy, so I think that is it. If you guys have any questions, I know I went super fast, please put them down below in the comments. I would love to answer any and all questions that you have. But very quickly, before she gets super fussy, my special announcement. We are going to be premiering our webinar next week, and that is going to be the 3 secrets to finally losing weight and keeping it off and reclaiming your health. So this way you have tons of energy and you are preventing all sorts of diseases and you're not going to get sick. So pay attention for that link next week, ladies. I would love for you to take a look. Let me know what